Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
Pretty good yourself.
Good. I am doing well. You are right on time. I told you 7:10, and 7:10 is here. So, for those of you in the listening audience, my guest in the second hour is Mr. Keith Andrew. And Keith is a radio talk show host himself, as well as he's done some other things. We're going to talk about that. So let somebody know that Keith is on the air with us. I'm going to share some information with you, and then Keith and I will begin our chat. So again, you know the drill. Get on all your social media sites and let somebody know that Keith Andrew is on the air with me in my second hour of the Reading Circle.
This year, firefighters like Fire Chief James Hall will battle wildfires around the country in hopes of containing them. But firefighters can't do it alone.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile, or it can ignite and destroy your home and community.
Get fire adapted. Learn simple steps you can take now to reduce wildfire damage later at fireadapted.org. A public service message brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council. Learn more at fireadapted.org.
Hey, parents of children with asthma, here's another hit from the Breathe Easies.
Don't smoke in the house. Don't smoke in the house. Don't smoke around the kids in the house. Don't smoke in the car. Don't smoke in the house. Don't break my heart with your secondhand smoke. And these kids, it can trigger the asthma.
Preventing asthma attacks can be as simple as making your home and car smoke-free zones. For more Breathe Easy tips to help stop asthma attacks, go to noattacks.org. Brought to you by the EPA and the Ad Council.
The cow says,
I love you.
To a child, it's just something else to play with. Lock it up, because 1.7 million children in the U.S. are living with unlocked and loaded guns. Get involved at ceasefireusa.org.
Welcome back to an extended version, or what I call a Reading Circle doubleheader. That's where I have more than one guest. In my first hour, I had Kathy. You heard that interview with her on the line. That was KP Carter. And we talked about her book, Summertime with Lizzie B. Hayes. And then in my second hour, I have Keith Andrew. Now, many of you hear me talk about all the time the value of social media and social networking. And the bulk of my guests that I've gotten from the show over the last couple of years in particular has come through either Twitter or LinkedIn, Facebook, not so much from Pinterest or Instagram, but certainly I'm beginning to use them more and more as well. But LinkedIn has been a godsend, and so has Facebook, and so has Twitter in terms of my being able to get guests to come on the show. And that is no different from this morning. And my guest, Keith Andrew, we met on LinkedIn, and I actually appeared on his show about a month, maybe 2 months ago now. And then we agreed that he would also come back and appear on my show as well. And that date has come upon us. So, Keith, again, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, too.
All right. Now, talk to me a little bit about, I'm trying to think of the name of your radio show. I remember it was
Uncensored.
That's it, Uncensored. I was getting ready to say Unleashed, but but Uncensored. And that is a radio show that you've begun. And so talk a little bit about where Uncensored came from.
Oh, that's a good question. I came up with the name Uncensored. You know, a lot of people had the name Uncensored. I said, what the hell? You know, a lot of people are using it. I just said, why not? Let's use it, see how it goes. You know, originally the talk show was called the Keith Andrew Power Hour. And that's when I was back in high school. But, I just thought Uncensored was a little bit stronger.
Now, you said you had the Keith Andrew Power Hour in high school, so you've always been interested in doing something in the media.
Yes, I did.
How did you get that started in high school?
Well, when I was in high school, I was always a part of the audio-visual department, and so I was always running around with the video camera, making videos, for myself or for the school. I was a DJ for they had the radio station, so that's where I created my own talk show. They soon after had a morning show where I came up with the idea for, having students come in and have their own morning show. And unfortunately, I wasn't a part of it. They took my idea and took it for themselves. But, for the past 3 years when I was in high school, I was there 4 years, but, I only started with my sophomore year, so 3 years. That was a passion of mine.
Now, those of you who are listening, I'm going to have Keith actually introduce himself, because that, if you notice, I didn't do, other than the fact that we met on LinkedIn. But I'm going to have Keith introduce himself, because there's a piece of the puzzle that we haven't let you in on yet that I'm going to let him share with you. And I'm doing that because I think you need, as the listening audience, all of us need to understand. And that's why I really hate Keith, I hate the term handicapped. I hate the term disabled. I hate any of those type of terms, because if anything, it's just a reverse. It's not a matter of being disabled. It's probably super abled. And in terms of handicapped, I know the history of where the word handicap came from. I just don't like those terms, even though they may be what they are. But the truth of the matter is, there are people that suffer from different things, whether they were born with them or whether it came upon later in life or whatever. But that still does not count them out. And listening audience, where I'm going with that is, once Keith kind of shares with you what his ability is, then you'll get a better appreciation for what I'm talking about, and how many times, unfortunately, people who are functioning as they ought to function, if there is such a thing, a lot of times will count people out who they think have this quote-unquote disability or what have you. So, Keith, tell us a little bit about yourself. We talked about it when we were on Uncensored, but if you wouldn't mind sharing with my listening audience as well.
All right. Well, the name's Keith Andrew. I'm the host of Uncensored, only available on the KeithAndrewNetwork.com. Also, it's on YouTube.com. And basically, the whole point of my talk show is to show people that even with a learning disability, I can still overcome controversy and reach my goals in life. At the same time, turning myself into a perfect example for people out there deaf, blind, or in a wheelchair. You should never label yourself or have people label you. And you should prove to them you can still know something no matter what.
Now, how much of a challenge or struggle has it been to get that message across? Because again, you have, I cringe, first off, when anybody tries to put somebody else down because of what's different. Because as we shared whenever I was on your show, we ought to be celebrating the differences, because we actually, no matter who you are, what color you are, what gender you are, what race you are, we have more similarities than we do differences. So therefore, the differences ought to be celebrated. But for many people, the difference is not a celebration. They try to use that as a put down. How difficult has that been, a message for you to get across of exactly what you just said? Regardless of whether it's blind, whether it's wheelchair, whether it's learning disability, what have you, we still do.
No, I agree with you. And, it doesn't matter if it's because I'm white or because you're black. I interview, and no disrespect by that if it came off like I'm an a-hole. But I was just saying, for a perfect example, it doesn't matter if I'm white or if you're black or if you're handicapped or you're not. If you're very passionate about your goals in life, you should prove to people you can still overcome controversy no matter what. You know, I recently did my 132 interviews, actors, actresses, models, CEOs, and I interviewed a lot of white people, African Americans, Asians, Spanish, Latinos, and I've been recently interested, and don't ask me why, but I've been very interested in having some Gothic girls on the talk show because, you know, I don't discriminate. You know, so when I was growing up and when I was in high school, I used to be into the whole Gothic thing. I was like, hey, if I had a handful of white actors, African American actors, Asian actors, Latino actors, why the hell not? Why can't I have some Gothic girls on there too?
Well, it's funny you would bring that up because I was watching an episode, and Frasier is like by far, I think, my favorite comedy. And I'm watching an episode of Frasier the other night, and Frasier's son, Freddie, comes into the house, and now he says he's Gothic. He and his little girlfriend, they come in all the black and the earrings and the makeup and everything, and he says he's gone Gothic. So the fact that you would bring that up when I just watched that episode 2 days ago is ironic.
Yeah, I just think it's very interesting, and, you know, a lot of people make fun of them, and it's, you know, oh no, I don't discriminate. I basically interview anyone and everyone. Like I said, you know, I don't want to repeat myself, but it doesn't matter if you're famous or if you're not. If you have a life story and if you're very passionate about your goals in life, I would love to hear it, and I don't discriminate.
All right, if you've just joined us, this is an extended version of the Reading Circle. This is our last show of the year, Keith, and I had you on here, one, because I did your show, but secondly, you have a very important message that when we come back from the information I need to share with the listening audience that I'm going to get into, because I want to keep hammering this whole notion across of exactly what you just said. And I'm looking for this interview. I'm always looking for my interviews to be inspirational, but I'm looking for this interview to be a different type of inspirational, particularly this time of year, because we just left the Christmas season. We just left Christmas a couple days ago. And for many people, if they didn't get the gift they want, or even some of the gifts they got, they're standing up at the return line at the store. In other words, they're not grateful. And I need your interview to kind of help somebody to be, you know what, you really do need to be grateful and thankful for what you have, regardless of what that is. So I'm going to share this information with the listening audience, and then we're going to come back and continue talking.
In 50 feet, turn left. Why are you driving so slowly?
After a few drinks, I'm taking it slow.
Well, you're not fooling the cop behind you.
What?
Get ready to pay in 0.1 miles.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hey, what's up? Thinking about you. XOXOXO. Want to snuggle. ... JK. Hit me back. You getting these texts? Question mark. We should hang later. I miss you. Holla at ya, boy. Holla back. Holla back. Holla back. Are you at home? Where are you? What are you doing? OMG. You are making me mad. Are you with your ex? You better text me back. I'm waiting outside your house.
Relentless, aggressive texting is like sending an angry robot to deliver your message. When does the robot become dangerous? Let us know at that'snotcool.com.
That'snotcool.com.
Brought to you by the Ad Council.
You're listening to The Reading Circle with Marc Medley on Brave New Radio.
Yes, you're listening to an extended version, or a double header, if you will. And my guest in the second hour is Keith Andrew, and he is the host of his own radio show Uncensored. And as you heard him earlier say, he actually, when he was in high school, had his own radio show within the high school, Keith Andrew, what you said, Keith Andrew Power Hour, correct?
Yes.
All right. So where I was going right before I shared the information with the listening audience is, Keith, talk to me a little bit about what is the definition, and I work with kids every day, so I know how it's defined within the school in terms of how you wind up being thought of as or classified into that. But talk to me a little about what is the definition, or what were you defined as when they say learning disabled or a learning disability?
That's a good question, but I would say, what would I say? I was labeled, well, two questions. The first one, I was labeled and as mentally challenged, mentally disturbed, and let's see, mentally challenged, mentally disturbed, mentally disconnected, just retarded. And second question is, people who I interviewed, again, you said this to me too, but when I interviewed someone, but I come off very professional, and I don't seem to have a learning disability. But the truth is, I had years of practice of, looking in the mirror and looking pretty, and it's just putting a face on. But the truth is, I do have a learning disability, but I do not, let it describe me or who I am, but I show people that you should never label yourself no matter what.
And see, that's why I asked the question. And thank you for being so honest and being so frank, because from the inspiration standpoint, and hopefully for those of you who may be listening, who may be whining, complaining about where you are in life, there's always someone out there who is worse off than you. I don't care how bad you have it, there's always somebody worse. And I'm so glad Keith was frank and forthright with describing his challenges. And my point is, this is someone who's just described him, and you said a word that I hadn't heard in a long time, which was retarded. Because I know we've moved away from that term altogether. We've moved to mentally challenged, disabled, handicapped, so forth. But you said retarded. People do not put or associate being able to do, say, for example, radio shows with retarded or learning disabilities. And yet you're doing it. And just as you said, very professionally. So for those of you listening, I have appeared on Keith's show, Uncensored. If you go on LinkedIn, I think, matter of fact, Keith, if I'm not mistaken, I was guest 99. And if you go on LinkedIn, you will see the various people in their commentary who've said, yes, I appeared on Keith's show, very professional, very warm, very welcoming. I really liked his format. I really liked his style. But those are not things that people associate with someone having a learning disability. And that's, to me, the inspiration of this show. And he said it a couple of minutes ago with, he has to work at that. It was practice. It was looking in the mirror. Those are things, Keith, that someone that doesn't have that may not want to go through.
No, I agree with you. And, I'm where I am today, 10, 15 years ago. I'm not the same person. I still have social anxiety. I still have panic attacks, and a lot of other things I don't want to get into. It's too personal. But overall, I didn't want to use it as a crutch, and I just wanted to prove to people I can still mount something before I die. But you answered a question before you went on our commercial break about how people being ungrateful. And I was thinking yesterday, I recently bought my family some gifts, and I was like, okay, what can I get myself? And I was thinking about getting something for my computer or like a video game, and I was thinking, as long as I'm able to have guests on my talk show, that's all I can ask. I have my health. I have my family. I have a roof over my head. And as long as I'm able to do what I love, I can die happy. But you said people who are ungrateful. You look at my generation, you look at your generation. You had your family. You went outside. You did the right thing. People in this generation, have their iPhones, iPads, this and that, and they're just spoiled because they don't know the values of family values. I don't know if that's an American thing. I know a lot of people say it's, in Canada, people say it's family comes first over technologies, and some people in the United States would say it depends on how you're raised. But, I don't put up with that. And if I did have a kid, I wouldn't give them an iPhone. I wouldn't give in to them. I would teach them family values.
See, I agree with you there. In terms of the being spoiled, I could not agree with you more. And for me, they may get those things, but they would have to be older. There's no way in the world. I don't like to see little girls in nail polish, like little 7 and 8 year olds, 6 and 7 year olds. I don't like to see them, all glamored and dolled up. In other words, we're going to have more than enough time to be grown. So why rush that? Why be putting nail polish on 3 and 4 and 5 year old girls and all that kind of stuff? Same thing with the technology. And I realize the generation, they've grown up or they're growing up with technology, but there's an age limit where that should begin. And you're right in terms of the family values and all those things being instilled. That's where I'm going with this, that those things should happen in those formative years, whether it's age 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all that. And then as they get older and they get around 12, 13 or what have you, then you can start introducing like the cell phones and all that. Because me personally, and I understand the dangers of today, but I just don't think, a 5 or 6 year old needs a cell phone. I just don't. That's just me. And I don't think it's a matter of being old fashioned, but I just do not believe a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 year old needs a cell phone. I just don't. So I'm with you there. And I mean, I'm just sitting here listening to you talk, and like this is a totally different experience even than when I was on your show, because just listening to kind of like where you're coming from and the message you're trying to send, I mean, it is just powerful in terms of trying to help people understand. Just because I asked you this question about the learning disability because there are some things that are truly like you're kind of born with. And then there are some folks that are just, they're not trying. They're being lazy and they get caught up in that label. And then there are folks who like, this is the way I was born. So no matter how much I may want this not to be, it's not going to change. But even with that, like you said, I'm not going to allow myself to be labeled. I'm not going to allow myself to be thought of as any different from anyone else. I'm going to show folks that I can indeed do. Because again, like I said, folks don't associate learning disability with being able to speak well. Folks don't associate learning disability with being able to write. Folks don't associate learning disability with being able to read. They don't associate those things together, and yet you're defying all that by being a radio talk show host. What has been the response like of your friends or family members, like when you said I'm doing radio?
When I first started it, I was wondering, I'm not bringing this up anyway. But when I first started, I got a lot of criticism saying, you're using LinkedIn or using Facebook, especially LinkedIn, because that's where all my 132 interviews came from. You're manipulating people, you're conning people, you're guilt-tripping people, you're stalking people, you're doing this, you're doing that. But recently, my brother had his own meeting, and the guy who was talking to it, like a professional scientist and a professional doctor, said, did you ever hear of something called the Keith Andrew Network? And he said, yes. And he's like, oh, well, I think he's doing a good thing, but I think he can do better, or something along those lines. And it's until a professional in their area said something, they didn't take it seriously. So now, after 132, they said, oh, I guess you're finally doing something right. But, it's just, I don't know, it's a learning experience, take it one day at a time. The reason I brought up LinkedIn, and Facebook, because, occasionally you find people who lie on LinkedIn and Facebook. Especially recently, I turned back to something called IMVU. And people who don't know what IMVU, you can go to imvu.com. It's basically instant messenger universe. I don't know. I don't know what the V would be. But it's where you go, you create your own avatar and your own universe.
Right.
And you go and talk to everyone. And I've been trying, like I said, to get some gossip girls. But then I've been also interested in growing my, just to get more Japanese girls, more Chinese girls, just so that I'm not racist.
Right.
But I interview everyone. And the one thing I noticed, because I started using this back in 2004, and I stopped in 2007, 2008, because people lie about their age. And they're like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Okay, are you really? No. I'm a 14-year-old, and then what are you doing on this site? And on Facebook and LinkedIn, I'm a professional doing this and that. No. I'm actually a 14-year-old. And it's like, what the hell? You're ruining things for everyone else.
Right.
And I recently interviewed someone who said, I don't let my kid leave the house. I don't let my 5-year-old leave the house without a cell phone. And what you said, you're 5 years old, you don't need a cell phone. And you'd be like, hey, Mommy, I'm calling you. I'm on the monkey bars. And it's kind of like, okay, I understand you want you to be safe.
Right,
you want to know where you're
I understand that piece too, but but you're right. I mean, if you're at the park on the monkey bars, first off, Mommy should be with you. That's the first thing. But, I mean, you are so right in terms of that. And then when you have people who abuse the social media, like you said, they pretend to be one age or pretend to be something else, that does mess it up for everyone else. And interestingly enough, I'm reading a book now called Anybody's Daughter. Now, the author is Pam Samuels Young, or Young Samuels. I think it's Samuels Young. But she's been on the show a couple of times, and her latest book is called Anybody's Daughter. And it's just that. The opening chapter is someone posing to be a 14-year-old boy. And it's not. It's a human trafficking ring that's on the site that's communicating with her, and she thinks it's a little boy, and she winds up getting kidnapped. And so you're right in terms of folks abusing this system, because it does mess it up for everybody, because LinkedIn is a very professional site, as well as, well, Facebook is what it is. It can go either way. But the opportunity for somebody to abuse it is there. But you said something when you were answering the last question that I thought was very interesting, that you said people were accusing you of trying to guilt people. Now, I'm going to tell you the truth, Keith. I knew nothing of any disability. I didn't know anything based on looking at your LinkedIn profile and based on whenever we started communicating with each other. I didn't know anything about any learning disability until we started talking that day on the interview. So why would they think, because it's not like you come at people saying, come on my show because I'm learning disabled. Why would they say you were guilting people?
I don't know. That's a good question. They could be just being assholes.
Right.
But, I don't know. You know, I guess people are just reflecting themselves on me.
That's true. You're right, because a lot of times it's their issues, not yours, and that's a very good way to look at it. That a lot of times when people are dealing with folks who are learning disabled or handicapped or whatever. I don't even like that. If you can see, I'm struggling even with saying these because I just don't like them. I don't like putting people in categories and boxes like that because what that says is you're something that I'm not, and because I'm no, that's just, that irks me. But you didn't, and for the listening audience, when Keith approached me about being on his show, he approached me the same way I approach folks. Usually I will tap into them on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or whatever and say, I'm inviting you to appear as a guest on my show. These are the things you have to do. We'll set a date. We'll set a time. But nowhere in that communication did he say anything along the lines of, I need you to come on as a pity guest. I need you to come on because I'm handicapped. I need you to come on because, as I said, I did not know that until we started talking in our interview. So, that's another inspiration as well, is the fact that you're asking people to come on the show just like anybody else. And I don't think I'm the only one of your now 132 that didn't know anything about you being disabled. So I just find that interesting that people say you're manipulating people or you're guilting people to come on your show. I don't understand that one at all.
I don't either.
If you've just joined us, this is an extended version of the Reading Circle with Marc Medley. My guest this morning is Keith Andrew, and I find him to be an inspiration because of the very thing that people try to use as a differentiator to make it seem like it's something bad. I think it's the other way around. I think it's something wonderful that he is doing, first off, following his passion, because if all of us would do that, the world would be a better place. If all of us would follow our passion, because Keith, many of us are just doing what we do, trying to get money or doing what we're trying to do to get a title or a name, not really what we love to do. So he's following his passion. Secondly, he's letting folks know, even though I have a different situation and circumstance, I'm still a human being and I'm really no different from you. And the same things that you can do, I may have to struggle more or I may have to put more work into it, but I can still do it. And that's the message I think everybody in the listening audience needs to hear. And this is a particularly good show as we go into 2015. It's a particularly good show as we've just going through the holiday season when so many people are so ungrateful. For me personally, if I didn't get not one gift on Thursday, I was okay. If I didn't get one thing, I'd have still been fine. But you have folks that if they didn't get what they thought Santa Claus was going to, I'm not talking about kids. I'm not talking about 3, 4, 5-year-olds. I'm talking about grown people. My guess is yesterday, it would have been yesterday, that the return lines were probably out the doors of people returning gifts of which people spent who knows how many dollars and how many hours buying them to begin with. And yet they were standing probably in somebody's return line yesterday, not because it didn't fit, but because they didn't like it. So the fact that we have what we have, we need to be grateful, because I'm talking to a young man that does not have everything that many have, and he's grateful. That's the part, Keith, that inspires me more than anything else talking to you. The fact that, I am what I am and I'm happy with who I am. You would be surprised how many people are not happy with who they are.
Well, I'm not happy. I have to learn to.
No. I'm not. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, you have it, you deal with it, and I'm still like you said, I'm still going to do my passion and what I want to do before I die.
Yes, absolutely.
But you have people who don't have a learning disability that don't have that kind of peace, that kind of comfort.
I will give you a perfect example. Just trying to find the words for it. I interviewed, like I said, I was 132. But during that time, when you're one of them, you're very upcoming, and you said you're very I almost said horn. I don't know why I said horn. Very warm-hearted, and it's like you're understanding. But there's a lot of other people who I interviewed and said, I think what you're doing, it's great, but I really want nothing to do with it. And I recently, back in, a year and a half ago, came across this young actress. I won't say her name, but she was an asshole. And the reason I say that, the reason she was an asshole was because she took my talk show name. I was like, okay, it's uncensored. I don't own the right to uncensored. You know, uncensored can be used for me, can be used for you, can be for my dog, my cat, whatever. But the part that she used my whole concept of saying, hey, blah, 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 I'm blah, blah, whatever, and my talk show is about this and it's about that, and it's uncensored. And the part that pissed me off was she didn't even let a week go by, a month go by. She did it the right next day and said, hey, I'm using the same idea as this person who has a learning disability. And, you know, I was pissed at her. I said, you know, you're a hypocrite. Where do you get off with that? And I was talking to Blog Talk Radio, and I was like, well, they don't want two people at the same shows. And the reason I didn't want to do Blog Talk Radio is because I didn't want to do, in no disrespect, what we're doing right now. Just audio with a blank screen with a video playing.
Right.
And I want to do something that, you know, gets people interested with the video. And no disrespect, I love your work, but I wanted to do something, you know, get people interested. And I went back and I apologized to her. And from her and her agent says, we don't accept apologies from people like you. And I was like, well, you know, I'm being upfront with you. I have a learning disability, and in the heat in the moment, I didn't, you know, use the N word. I didn't do that. I didn't use the C word, the F word. I just said, you know, you're a hypocrite, and where do you get off? And I apologized, and she said to me, we don't accept apologies from people like you.
See, that's the line I don't get. People like you. That I have, and no, I didn't take it as disrespectful at all, because there are different formats. There's different formats of radio. There's different formats of TV. So all of us, there's room for all of us. There's room for my format. There's room for your format. So I'm not disrespected or offended by that at all. But what I heard you say just now was someone who turned you down from being on your show now took your concept and the name, put it on Blog Talk, and now when you went to do it on Blog Talk said we can't have two shows with the same name. And now whenever you call that person back up to say, you know, so forth and so on, they turn around and say, we don't talk to people like you?
Well, from her and her agent, yes. We don't accept apologies from people like you.
That's crazy.
And that's messed up.
That's crazy. And whoever that is, whether it's the agent or the person, I can tell you, because there's that thing called karma. What goes around comes around. And I can tell you now, they may prosper for a little while, but they're somewhere along the way, they're going to hit a snag, and that snag is going to be related to that comment.
No, I give you, that's absolutely. And, you all talk about karma. I believe in karma, and karma has kicked, my butt, a lot of times, and, you should always do the right things, but, it's, karma is something you shouldn't mess around with.
I agree. Keith, I agree. What you put out is what you get back, and it doesn't always come immediately. See, for me, law of attraction, karma, my faith in God, they're not diametrically opposed. If anything, they all work together. If you read in the Bible, you reap what you sow. It's pretty much saying the same thing as karma, pretty much saying the same thing as law of attraction. As a man thinketh, so is he. It's the same principle, if you will. So when I say I believe in karma, when I say I believe in law of attraction, that does not negate the fact that I believe in God, that I believe in Jesus, that I believe in the Bible. It doesn't negate that at all, and vice versa. But there's no doubt when you get to the point where you feel as if you're looking down on somebody else, there's going to come a point where you're going to have a great fall, because there's an old saying, be kind to the people you meet on the way up, because you meet those same people on the way down. So you never know. That same actor or actress and that same agency may wind up having to come back to you for something.
No, I agree with you. And there's a couple other agents where, I got criticism on my website saying, who built this website? It looked like, someone with a learning disability made this website. And I just came across a lot of people like that, and it's kind of like, okay, I know I'm not rich or famous or have a lot of money that I can blow, but where do you get off? You're talking down to me. He's like, like you said, it's karma.
Right. And see, this, it's just, I'm sitting here just listening to that comment getting steamed, because I don't know. I mean, in terms of, you, like you said earlier, you just treat people right. That's just all to it. You just treat people the best you can. You treat people right. No one has any room to be looking down on anybody else, because every last one of us has something, if somebody chose to, that they could use as the thing to look down on you for. So everybody has something that's different that somebody could now turn. That's why the whole racist thing, I understand it, because it's about power. I understand that. But at the same time, at the end of the day, everybody's a human being. Even this whole thing that's going on with the police and everything, Black Lives Matter. No, all lives matter. I tried to get a hashtag going that said regard all lives. I haven't seen it pick up or take off yet, but have regard for all lives. It's not a matter of having regard for just black lives, not having a regard for just police lives, let's have regard for all lives. And if we did that, everybody would be alive. We wouldn't have anybody getting killed if we all regarded all lives. So it's just, I just struggle with this whole notion of trying to put one person down for something that you perceive as a difference. And like I said, in your case, that's just like somebody that has dyslexia, someone that has ADHD, someone that has things like one of my favorite quarterbacks who quarterbacked my favorite football team was Terry Bradshaw. And Terry Bradshaw talks about how he had no idea he had a learning disability till he was an adult. He didn't understand why some things didn't come to him in school. But, he was one heck of a quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Didn't know anything about ADHD and ADD and all that kind of stuff. But as it turns out, he has a learning disability as well. But nobody would go up to Terry Bradshaw and say, well, I'm going to look down on you because you have a learning disability.
No, because he's 300 pounds and he probably beat the crap out of you.
But he, and if you read any of his books or if you listen to him, he'll proudly share that with folks. It's just that during the time frame that he grew up, they didn't diagnose, or they didn't know what this thing called some type of a learning disability is, but he had that as a child in school, and he always talks about how he just didn't understand, or some things just didn't come. But when you got him on that football field, when you gave him his play, matter of fact, he called most of his own plays. The coaches were not calling his plays. He was calling his own plays on the field. So my point is, everybody can do something. From the anyone who has whatever they're born with, whatever their challenge is, everyone can do something. And the trick is for everybody to recognize that whatever something you can do, we're going to appreciate that. We're not going to laugh at you. We're not going to devalue it or depreciate it. We're going to appreciate whatever it is that you have to offer. And then the next person says, we appreciate what you have to offer. And that's how we begin to celebrate our differences, opposed to trying to, laugh at somebody or put somebody down for what the difference is. So that's why I applaud you and salute you for what you are attempting to do, actually what you're doing. Because if you're up to your 132nd guess, you're actually doing it. It's not even a matter of trying. You're doing it. So I assume.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I just say, get your message out there. Keep going on shows such as this. Anybody that you link up with that has a show, do the same thing you did with me. Mind if I come be a guest on your show? Or most of the time we kind of do that collegial recognition, if you will. I'm trying to look for the word. Just the courtesy. That's what I was looking for. The collegial courtesy. Well, you know what? You've had me on your show. You can come on mine. Just as colleagues, just as a courtesy. But continue to do that, continue to get the message out, and continue to keep the spirit that you have in terms of, I cannot be bogged down and worried about folks that have an issue with me having a learning disability, because the truth of the matter is that is not your issue. That's their issue. The fact that they have a problem with it, that's their issue. It's not yours.
Absolutely.
So, all right, so what's up next on Uncensored? Because we're down to the last couple of minutes. What's next on Uncensored? Who you got? I know you were talking about the Gothic girls, and so what's after the Gothics?
Well, attempted to. I really don't know how to approach that, not at all. It was just an idea, but we'll see how it goes. It's just, there's a couple of people that want to be on the show, but I have to wait till January, so that's like, I have to play the waiting game, and it's like I'm climbing up the walls.
Yeah, I know that feeling too. I'm in the same boat right now. I'm scheduling my January guests, and then I'll be doing. I usually try to schedule them in quarters. I try to do first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter of the year. So I'm trying to get all my first quarter guests together for 2015 now. So I know that feeling. So Keith, I thank you for rising early with me and chatting with me this morning. I wish you absolutely nothing but the best.
You too. I appreciate it. And happy holidays.
Thank you. Same to you. Have a great 2015.
You too. Keep in touch.
I will. Take care now.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.